Hello everyone, I'm Marnix, creative designer at Bite Me Games. One of my favorite hobbies has to be reading, regardless of whether it's a fiction or a non-fiction book. As part of my insatiable hunger for reading, I have of course read quite a few books regarding a variety of different aspects of game development by now. And I thought maybe it's a good idea to share some of these books and the key ideas that they cover with you. You can find affiliate links to all of the books I've mentioned in the description down below. An important thing to note is that there are hundreds of books regarding all different aspects of game development, like programming for example, or story writing or music. All of them go way more into the details about these. I'm only covering 3 books here, and all of them stay quite high level and thus I think are relevant for everyone in order to understand the concepts of game development or running a game company in general. If you want some more focused books, then make sure to also visit the accompanying blog post in which I will list some other books that I've read and that I personally think have added a lot of value and maybe a bit more specific to certain aspects. Our first book on the list is Blood, Sweat and Pixels by David Kushner. What I like about the book is that it gives you a behind-the-scenes look at all different kinds of game development studios, from the solo indie developer to big established studios like Bungie and Naughty Dog. It dissects 10 different games. Most of them have been made in the past 10 years, so are still quite relevant, and describes all the hardships each studio had to endure, because there's a lot of hardships in game development. Changing deadlines, conflicting ideas, studios being closed, loss of funding and much more. It doesn't just cover the lows of each studio though, it instead takes you through the entire development process as well. From the conception of a game idea all the way to the post-launch struggles. Personally, as an indie developer, the stories of how the makers of Shovel Knight risked all of their life savings to go all in on their game studio serve as an incredible inspiration to working on our own games over here. Following their hardships and then looking at the final payoff gives you a feeling of, I wish that was me. Of course, it is still important to know that these are still highlight reels. For every successful indie developer, there are at least 10 failed ones unfortunately, if it's not more. Nevertheless, I think this book serves as a great introduction into the crazy world of game development and gives you some great insights into how every project will come with its fair share of struggles. The next book is Video Game Storytelling. It was probably one of the first books I've actually read in regards to game creation, and I also still believe it's one of the best I've read so far. I know I said earlier that all books are high level, and here I am having a book that talks specifically about storytelling for video games. However, this book isn't just for writers. It can be divided in 2 main parts. The first one covers the main idea, how do you write an enticing storyline, and it covers various topics like the hero's journey or how to write your characters. This part can still be very interesting for a solo indie developer, as it also gives you very actionable advice into starting to write, working on creating your own game story. The second part is what makes the book so versatile though. Once you have your story, it's not just the writer who's responsible for having a good story in your game. Everyone from the developers to the sound guys to even the project manager has a role to play in shaping how the finished game story will be. It also simply covers each role that a studio may have and gives them direct advice to each role in how they can influence the story in order to make it the best possible version of itself. So regardless of your role in the game development world, everyone should go through this one, as it's also a pretty quick read, but it gives you some invaluable information. Unless your game is going to have no storyline at all for some reason, having read at least this book will help you tremendously in creating an enticing storyline. Next up is The Lean Startup. This one isn't exactly a book focused on video game development, but I think it's still a critical book for everyone who plans on attempting to make a career out of their game development journey. I originally read this book quite a few years ago, back when I was still purely in the software development side of things, But pretty much all of the lessons carry over to game development as well. As a small indie studio, you probably still classify as a startup in the end. Maybe just not with the hip turtlenecks or the other buzzwords that surround startups, but you are still a small startup company in the end. The lean startup pitches a way to run your company in a lean and agile way instead of an old and traditional waterfall approach. If you come from a software development background, the term agile may already be something you're familiar with. If not, let me quickly explain. It's a way to work iteratively, adding smaller features over shorter periods of time called sprints. The lean startup also preaches the use of MVPs, minimum viable products. This is something that carries over to game development as well. You will want to create a minimum viable product of your game as fast as possible. Think of it as your internal demo. You focus on the core mechanics and gameplay in the beginning, but leave out most of the time-intensive aspects. And then you already have something to show if someone asks, for example, what's your game? Or if you're talking to a friend or maybe a publisher, you can just give them your minimum viable product, also known as your latest demo, and he can see for himself what you've been up to. Of course, these 3 books are only the beginning, so make sure to check out the accompanying blog post to find more reading material. In the meantime, that was all from my end. Did I miss some great books that you've read? Feel free to share them with me and the rest of the viewers in the comments down below. Apart from that, if you're new here, hi. We're a small indie team that is documenting our development and things we learned along the way in creating our own video game. We upload weekly as well, so if this seems interesting to you, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. Also, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. It really helps us out. That's all from me. I'll see you guys next week with a new video. Thanks for watching.